There we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another fantastic episode. Actually, not sure we're going to post this on. Kids from It, Powers Taken Not Given, we'll see, but doesn't matter. My name is TJ Whitehead, Powers Taken Not Given, joined by an old college classmate of mine, Bobby Endyke. How you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing good, It's a good Friday and looking forward to the holidays, man.
Yeah. Another year just sped by. We were just talking backstage about how quickly time moves when you get older, and I don't like it. I'm not a fan. Like you remember years seem to take ages when you were a child, and then you become an adult and you lose track of an entire decade pretty easily.
Yep, it felt like I just took down my Christmas lights just a month ago from last year. So I don't know what's going on. And I wonder if it's just that COVID time too, right? Like everything feels a lot more subjective than it used to, but I don't. Maybe that's just me.
No, COVID. I mean, it's kind of cliche to say that COVID changed everything, and it did. Like nothing. It's going to be a while before we reestablish what's normal, and it actually changed some things that I've been asking for years that I actually hate now. It's like be careful what you wish for type of thing. When I was in college, actually, I had this idea that I thought it was very strange that you could order pizza and get the pizza delivered to your house, but very few other things. And what really bothered me was breakfast, because if it was Saturday morning or Sunday morning, I said, man, I really wish I could just have breakfast brought to my door anytime I wanted. And of course, COVID came along, and now you can order anything you want. Horrible idea. Awful. Like now I can order breakfast. I'm going to do it. And say what?
That's so dangerous.
It is. Like it's bad for your health. It's bad for your wallet. It's terrible. So I feel bad that I mean, it didn't invent that, but the fact that my dream came true and now it's a fucking nightmare.
Yeah. I think one of my kids a couple months ago tried to order French fries from McDonald's on Grubhub. I'm like, dude, this is going to cost you $20 and you're getting like cold French fries delivered. I don't know if this is really what you want to waste $20 for.
Oh yeah. That's funny, because I remember my dad, he had like a threshold of like what you would order. If we're like ordering pizza, he's like, no, I don't order just a cheese pizza to the house. If you're going to order pizza, we're going to order a lot more than this. It's got to be worth it. And also he would actually not do the deliveries because it costs more. And he's like, no, you can take 9 minutes out of your day and go get the pizza. I'm my dad now. It's like, no, why would I do that? Why would I pay twice as much basically for this food when I could just drive and go get it myself? I'm I should be more self-sufficient than that. But yeah, it is kind of, also with this whole thing with DoorDash and Grubhub and everything, I'm always weirded out by people who, honestly, I've always been this way. People who are really mean and rude to waiters or food service folks. Yeah, it's like they woke up intentionally planning to F up your order and ruin your day. It's like, no, they're human beings. They've done orders for 40 people today. So one of them's going to be wrong. All right. It'll happen to be you. I'm sorry. And people who get mad at the delivery drivers because the food was like, they just picked it up. All right.
That's all they do. Yeah.
Yeah. I felt really bad one time because I'd ordered some food from Sonic, a burger, a shake, soda, something like that. And I got a call from the delivery driver, and she said, "Oh, hey, I'm so sorry, but your food is going to be late." And I was like, "Oh, what happened?" And she says, I was driving the food to you from Sonic. I picked it up, and I got into a fender bender. I hit someone's car on my way there, and your food spilled all over the place. So I got to go back to Sonic and go get it." I was like, "Oh no!" Like me ordering that drink probably cost her $500 and damages her vehicle, and she had to go back and get the drug. Sure, there's some sort of penalty on this, and I
she apologizes to you,
and she apologizes to me, right? She's like, "Oh, I'm so because like, the customer made this order, and now it's gonna be late. Now he's gonna be mad. I might get a bad review." I was like, "Oh man, it really soured the experience for me." Very rude of her to do that.
How dare she?
I know, yeah. Yeah, that's some weird stuff. But all right, so I asked Bobby to come on today to talk about, honestly, the pretense of the conversation was about Donald Trump, because we were messaging about how, I forgot how it started actually, but we were talking about how bizarre it was that, bizarre, disappointing. Actually, I'm struggling to find the right word, honestly, that the Christian right has just embraced Donald Trump the entire way. But before we get there, I wanted to get into a little bit of your background and how you grew up and how you ended up in this crazy place and where we go from there. So if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, your family, your influences and all that.
Yeah. So I born and raised in Colorado. It's where I live now. By the way, just a quick shout out. I love my state. I think we're doing a lot of things right. I think from what you've seen in some of the recent election research and kind of deep dives, Colorado is one of the only states, maybe there's a couple more, that didn't shift majorly right.
I saw that map, yeah.
And some of that stuff. So kind of proud of what we've done. Grew up oldest of four boys. Grew up in the independent fundamentalist Baptist movement. And if you're familiar with that, great. If you aren't, then all great. It's a weird space to be in. Went to a big fundamentalist Baptist church here in Lakewood. So that's kind of where I got my upbringing. That's where I had my community. That's where I had my school was kind of connected to the church. Went there K through 12, and then went to college at Maranatha Baptist Bible College, where I got to know you. I think we played football together a little bit too, right?
Yep.
So we had some good times there, but then graduated in 2006. Graduated 2006. Kind of been in the. I work in HR now, so I that's kind of what pays my bills. I love it. It's a good role, but I had graduated college with the intent of becoming a youth pastor of some sort. I could never land a job as a youth pastor, just never could.
Really?
Yeah. Like I interviewed, and they're like, nope, sorry. I was like, all right. So I worked at UPS in Wisconsin, kind of close to the school that we went to. And that's kind of how I got my start into HR. And I've been doing it really ever since. But right now I am an elder at my church. We have a small community church here in Littleton, Colorado. And it's a small thing, like it's nothing huge. And we have a good time. I think one of the big things that we really try to focus on is how do we continue to engage and learn with our communities that we're around, especially the most vulnerable in our areas. That's kind of our gig, is how do we love God and love our neighbors, particularly the vulnerable folks. So that's kind of our focus. I've got three kids. We're also foster parents. So we have a 2-year-old foster kidder right now who we've had for a little over 2 years, almost 2.5 years. And we'll see how that ends up. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
That is cool, man. That's cool. I was gonna ask, did you end up being a youth pastor at this church or not? So you never.
No. Never did. I volunteered a couple of times at the church I grew up at, and then they ended up kicking me out because I wanted to go do something else. Like, great, fine, whatever.
Yeah.
And then have just been kind of doing volunteer stuff ever since. I've never been paid by a church or never been paid by anything. So I've always been in HR. That's kind of been my thing.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I was asking because there's a running joke I have. I have a podcast that I do with three people who went to high school with me. Okay. And I have a running joke always making fun of youth pastors about how they're always getting into trouble and how they're sexual deviants. So look, I'm glad. I'm not. That was your problem. You weren't quite degenerate enough. And they're like, no, man, you don't got that look about you. We can't hire you as a youth pastor.
That's probably what it was.
Yeah. And I was how far are you from Lauren Boebert's district?
Oh God. Well, her new one is
her new one. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Where is her new one? It's more like Weld County up north. So we're Arapahoe County. Jason Crow is our rep. And really, really great rep, but we're probably like an hour and a half away.
All right. That's a good safe distance. You don't gotta have the chance of running into her when you're shopping or anything like that. Yeah. And you mentioned you were from Colorado, and this is Wolfie. He likes to appear all the time. Whenever I'm doing podcasts or Zoom calls or anything on the computer or talking on the phone, he gets really jealous. He's not part of the action. Nothing I can do to stop it. I can close the door, but then he just scratches the door, and that's distracting too.
Yep.
And So this would have worked. Where at the end of these, I always like to do trivia, like some random trivia that we have. This would have worked for random trivia, but it's not mine. But I wanted to bring it up anyway. So I'm sure you know, but at the Denver airport, there's this. Man. Say what?
Blucifer.
Oh, is that what it's called?
Yeah,
Blucifer? Oh, I love that. That is great. So yeah, so the Denver airport, if you've ever been there, has this giant ass demon horse statue. This thing's got to be 30 or 40 feet tall, right? How big is this thing? It is massive.
It's big. It's big. Do you know the story behind it?
I was going to say the trivia behind it is that it killed its maker.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know the guy's name or why he was commissioned to build this monstrosity, but this horse, during its construction, I think they were putting on a crane or something, and they're putting the horse together, and part of the horse fell on the guy's leg, and I think he bled out, right?
Yep. Its maker is dead, which is sad because it's a pretty freaking cool horse.
It is.
But yeah, if it killed its maker, man, it can do lots of damage.
Amazing they kept it around, but it is such a what do you know is the why? Like, why did they decide to go with this? Like, they could have just gone with a horse, but they went with a blue horse with red eyes. I do love Blucifer. Blucifer's great.
Blucifer's a great name. I don't know if you've ever done it, but if you're ever into going down the conspiracy theories hole, DIA has lots of them. Like, there's lots of conspiracy theories about DIA and how it was made an underground bunker for all sorts of like high and privileged and rich people to hide out during a nuclear holocaust. It's crazy. I'm guessing it has something to do with just the crazy conspiracy theories and that DIA is part of.
What is DIA? Denver International Airport? Okay, yeah. All right. I just thought that when I said it, that's probably what it means. Is that like with underground bunkers and stuff like that?
Yeah. I could be wrong, but there's Mason symbols on the floor in some of the walkways. So a lot of it's like whoever's a part of this society, like they have access to all sorts of things down in the bunkers. So it's kind of wild.
It's funny how many conspiracies center around the Masons, man. It's just so many. And like my uncle is a member of the Masons. Okay. And I listen to him. Not my cousin, he's a member of the Mason. I hear him talking about this stuff all the time. And it's just like they're into history and cool stuff like that. And they talk about, this guy was a Mason. And I remember hearing the conspiracy that, most of the presidents were Freemasons. Turns out, no, like most of them were like Episcopalians or something. Yeah. And I haven't heard one conspiracy theory about how Episcopalians are taking over the world. And the Mason symbols, there's a ton of Masonic symbols. There's in Indianapolis, that's where I am right now. There's this Masonic. The Masonic lodges are numbered. So Masonic Lodge 1, 2, 3, 4. We have the 666th one here. And I know, right? And it's got like the Mason symbol on it. It looks super creepy. But the Mason symbols are, one of them is like a compass. It's like you see this shit everywhere. It's not that weird at all. I don't know, but it is. I do love a good conspiracy theory though. And I love conspiracy theories because they're fun and they're interesting, and studying the history is fascinating. Yeah. But then you talk to someone who's like, oh no, I just believe them all. I believe all these 500-year-old anti-Semitic conspiracies. It's like, I thought you were smarter than that, man. It's kind of disappointing. I'm sure you've run across that.
Oh yeah. Like I think there's there's all the flat earther kind of, but like those are kind of the basic ones. But when you get to the really interesting ones, like DIA was housed for this kind of like, I live here. I want to find this out.
I want to know more. Yeah. The flat earth one is so disappointing, man. I grew up thinking that flat earthers, that flat earthers were just trolls. They were just faking it.
Sure. Yeah.
And I still kind of think that. But then I see people who I know aren't getting paid, who are just regular folk, and they're like, no, I met two flat earthers at the same time once. I was at a barber shop and I ran across two people that both believed the earth was flat. I had a 45-minute conversation with these folks, just going over like 8th grade science with them and everything.
Tell me more.
And it was just depressing. I don't know. There's just no excuse for anything like that. But actually, this dives right into what we're discussing here about Christian fundamentalism. So Bobby and I grew up as Christian fundamentalists. We went to a fundamentalist college and everything. And I said a lot that Christian fundamentalism, like that rigid interpretation of all these writings, it kind of primes you for conspiracies. Because I mean, I'm sure you remember, everyone always told us that scientists are lying to you because they're trying to keep you away from God. Doctors are lying to you because they're trying to keep you away from God. Meteorologists are lying to you to keep you away from God. So if you grow up thinking, oh, well, everyone in every system, every authority figure, every expert, every college professor, they're lying to me to keep me from God. What else are they lying about? And you're open to believe pretty much anything at that point.
Yeah, I think it's just that distrust. Like the independent Baptist fundamentalist movement is a movement that is really without a lot of accountability, except for the one guy who's in charge of things, right? So if that's kind of baked into their system, then yeah, they're going to be distrusting of any other institution out there that has some sort of authority that is bigger than them. Plus you think of like, if you like, I got a bachelor's degree, or kind of halfway done with a master's degree in theology. So if you think of like how the Bible kind of talks about how the earth was made and what the earth looked like, right? You got this big old dome that's kind of on pillars, and you got the water above the earth. No wonder, like if that's what those people thought the earth was like, and we're taking it as like this flat reading for all time.
Yeah.
Well, no wonder we can believe the earth is flat and scientists are wrong. This is what the Bible kind of describes things as, right? Like that's not how really the Bible is supposed to work.
Yeah. I went over the exact same thing with a because you almost every time you run across a flat earther, you will run across some sort of religious foundation for it. And very, very rarely will you not, if you really start digging deep. And I didn't realize this as a kid, because we were taught that the Bible said the earth was round when we were kids. That's what we were like, look, it says the circle of the earth. And so yeah. I thought, but then I learned more. Like you were talking, like, for example, when I was telling these folks how the earth is obviously round, here are 100 reasons we know why. Why is the moon upside down in Australia? You know, stuff like that. And I brought this up because they mentioned, well, what about the firmament? I said, what about the firmament? And then I was like, yeah, the Bible that you're referencing in the book of Genesis, where it says that there was a firmament. And the firmament you'll see in a lot of ancient societies where they'll talk about the sky as an object. And it's kind of like bleeds down into stories how people say the sky is falling, like the sky is an actual object. And you had the waters above the heavens, and you had the pillars of the earth and everything. And I said, but this is just like a snow globe view of the world that a lot of ancient societies had. And I was like, what is the firmament made out of? And it's like, I don't know. You've never considered this? You've never considered that there's a massive object that you're saying is over us, and not once have you thought, what is it made out of? I was like, because if it's glass, we would all bake to death. And it's like, which, you know where? Yeah, I know. You know where I learned this? I didn't take the class Modern Creationary Thought in college, but I knew people who did. And I remember them talking about the canopy theory that a lot of people said that it didn't rain before the flood, but there was like a mist, like a canopy over the earth, and that's what fell and caused all the rain. And it also kept oxygen levels high, and it's why people live so long.
Yeah.
And people that took modern creationary thought said, yeah, we went over this in class, and it turns out that can't happen, because if there was a canopy over the earth like that, Earth would be 800 degrees. So I was like, oh, that's good to know. I wish I'd have taken that class because I mean, as bad as Maranatha was in a lot of ways, it actually did strengthen my critical thinking a lot. I don't know.
I think that's the one thing I say is I don't, and I could be wrong about this, but I don't know if I would be where I am today if I didn't, like, I do believe our professors took the Bible seriously. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm here today, right? Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons why I'm in this spot where I have kind of like, I have fully disregarded the fundamentalist ideals, a lot of the conservative ideals too, because I think there's like a weird combination of people. We now drink whiskey and drink beer and do whatever, but you still hold on to like the fundamentals, the fundamentalist theology that you haven't disregarded yet. So like you can do the things that you weren't supposed to do, but you still believe a lot of the core things of fundamentalist teaching, and you haven't really left it. So I think I'm pretty thick-headed, so I finally left the fundamentalist teaching too, right? So like even that's gone. Like the flood probably didn't happen.
Yeah, right.
That's probably a story. That's probably like more of a story on social interactions with this one nation and the other nations of the world, and they're trying to figure out like, hey, a flood maybe happened locally one time, and now we're just trying to figure out why and what does our God say about it compared to what your God says about it, right?
Yeah. Like, yeah, I agree with the flood and everything. Like, almost certainly that. I mean, it was the Mesopotamian area, and floods happened a lot. Some were major, catastrophic ones, and like the stories that go back. The Epic of Gilgamesh talks about a similar type of flood. It even has an ark in it. So the story is very old, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if that area did suffer a massive flood and it grew into legend. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. But saying that this story is 100% real, despite everything that goes against it, I don't know. It's kind of stubborn at that point. It's just like it's just being married to an ideology and not to reality.
Yeah. Yeah, and to be honest, it's hard when you've been baked into that framework for all your life or for a good chunk of life, because it's super simple and easy to grasp a hold of. Like it's black and white. It's this or that. There's no and that's super easy to grab onto. But it's when you start digging into details and figuring out, oh man, like scientists say the Earth, like the universe is 130 billion years old. But this says it was created, in 7 days, maybe 6,000 years ago. But what were the authors of Genesis and the editors of Genesis actually trying to do?
Yeah.
Different question than saying, well, what did they say? Well, they said a lot of weird things. But what are they trying to get across? And I think that's the right question that I think should be asked, not what does the Bible say? Because you can make the Bible say whatever you want.
You can. This is something that I harp on all the time, that I don't like it when people say that, oh, well, these people aren't true Christians. They're twisting what the Bible says. Like, look, welcome to human beings interpreting religious texts. It's easy to do any way you want.
Yeah.
And with the way of thinking at Maranatha and everything, what I was trying to make, did you say that you may not be where you are today if it weren't for Maranatha? Is that what you said?
Yeah. I think there were a handful of professors that really made us think critically about the serious nature of Christian history and biblical tradition. And I remember, I think it was a Baptist heritage class. I think everybody had to take that, right?
Yep.
And there was one time we were going through like the fundamentals of Baptist theology, and I asked the question, what are the fundamentals? Like, does everybody agree on these things? And the answer is no, we don't. There's not a full list. So I'm like, okay, so then everybody can just kind of add things that they want, and we've been doing this for hundreds of years. No wonder we've gotten so that's kind of when I was like, I think we're missing something. If we call ourselves fundamentalists and we don't all agree on what those fundamentals are, then the intellectual arrogancy of that is pretty like, hey, we got it right. Out of all of these different denominations and different traditions, finally God chose the right group of people to get the scriptures right. Man, I'm so disappointed that I never ran across you have these conversations before, because that's essentially what happened to me. Is that Baptist heritage and was a very important part of my life and time in my life, because there was also I took Baptist heritage and we had this conference. It was this like Baptist heritage conference or whatever. And it was like my sophomore year. Yeah. And I wanted to know, because like what they tell us when you said that a few hundred years ago, we figured this out. That's not what the Baptists would tell you. The Baptists say, oh, actually, it's been us since the beginning. We are the ones, like there was the remnants. Yeah, we've always, if you went back to a first century Judean church, you would have seen exactly what you see at your Christian church at home, which seems a little suspect. And I think we even had like a joke at Maranatha that
it's difficult to study Christian history because you go back far enough and it's all Catholic. Like, yeah, kind of funny
Weird, right?
that word, weird, right? But they say no, there were like proto-Baptists out there somewhere, and they just didn't have any writings. And but I wanted to know. Okay, I liked arguing about religion and everything like we all did back in those days, and I wanted to know, okay, how can I prove that our interpretation of the Bible as Baptists is, if not the best or not, is not completely accurate, certainly the best option for what we have on earth. That's what I wanted to prove. And at the end of the Baptist Heritage Conference, they said, well, Baptists are right because we follow the Bible. And I remember sitting there, it's like, everyone would say that. Literally every Christian denomination would tell you the same thing. And I was not satisfied with that. So I went into a personal study into the New Testament, the construction of the New Testament canon, and how it became, the canon we know today. And my findings were not comforting. They weren't comforting at all. It's like, oh, okay, these books were like first put together, not the 27 we know, but the first New Testament canon was from a guy named Marcion, who was this bishop, and then other competing bishops. The 27 books we have now came about pretty early, but ultimately these books were decided by human beings that had no more apostolic authority than you or me. So what makes this like the definitive word of God compared to anything else? Then I found out that there is no such thing as actually the Bible. There's like Coptic Christians and Catholics and Eastern, they have slightly different Bibles. Okay, this is just, it's all out there. So now that Maranatha did train me for that though. And I'm shocked more people didn't go down that road because it was right there in front of us.
Yeah. I think that's the thing that I had to eventually get used to, the idea that bibliolatry was a real thing. Right, where we kind of worship the Bible above just about anything else. It kind of felt like fourth person of the Trinity. Nice. Every other religion, or every other version of religion, always has tradition, human experience, reason as methods to interpret reality, along with the scriptures. But for some reason, us Baptists, we're like, nope, it's just the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have tradition isn't a big deal for us. Reason's not a big deal for us. I think it's the Wesleyan quadrilateral, if you ever want to look that up, but it's like scriptures, experience, reason, and Christian tradition. And all of those things are great tools to help us interpret reality and community. That's kind of where we all come up in. But if it's just the Bible, it's a very much a we weren't very self-aware that we were bringing our own biases and our own experiences and our own ideas and our own modern thought onto our interpretation. But we use that as the default. That's the way it's always been, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. That took me a long time to realize that.
Yeah, it's true. It's you're never really aware of your own biases, and it's great to have other people there to point it out, which made it so disappointing how uncommon I found that to be. For as much as we talked about all this stuff, because I remember just having a lot of epiphanies there on stuff I hadn't really considered, like Dr. Radford, for example. I took Old Testament geography. It was a class called Old Testament geography I took with him. Fun class, really great. We learned all about the maps and the areas, locations of the Middle East. And I remember being in church when I was a kid, and pastors would always make fun. You ever hear people say that the Israelites didn't cross the Red Sea; they crossed the Sea of Reeds, and they would always make fun of how absurd that was and everything. And Dr. Radford got up there and he said, "Actually, no, I think that's right. I think they did cross Sea of Reeds." I had never heard someone say that before. I was like, okay, you got my attention. What's going on here? Right. And so he said, yeah. So if you read the passage, it says that they crossed the Red Sea. But if you look at the context here, it says that I think there's 3 million Hebrew males. And so he says, so you roughly estimate there's going to be 3 million Hebrew females, a couple million children, and their equipment, their livestock. A lot of them are going to be old people or sick. And he said that if you look at the narrowest part of the Red Sea, there is no way at all you can get 8 million people and their equipment to cross that in 8 to 12 hours. It can't happen because they did it all in one night. He's like, it cannot happen. It is physically impossible to do it. And he's like, in the Red Sea, like the banks weren't wildly different thousands of years ago as they are today. It's pretty much the same thing. He's like, it's just not, that would be a bigger miracle than the sea actually parting. So he said, and so he said that a lot of interpretations say, well, actually, this is supposed to be sea, because the language is, weird sometimes. Like, it's actually supposed to be Sea of Reeds, which, it does like dry up sometimes, and it's a body of water that could be crossed in one night. So he's like, I just think that makes more sense. I had never heard anyone say that publicly, or at least give it any thought whatsoever. Yeah. And he also debunked this. I don't know if you ever heard these stories about how someone found the Ark of the Covenant under Golgotha, and they had blood on there that they tested, and it only had
sure.
Yeah, you've heard that.
13 chromosomes or something like
that. Yes, exactly. And so I heard that. I said, oh, okay, well, obviously, I can't believe scientists are denying this when you have blood with 13 chromosomes here. Although that wouldn't even, honestly, when I think about it, that wouldn't, because it could just be some other animal. But anyway, that has 13 chromosomes. But no, but it's like, then Dr. Radford was like, yeah, that's just nonsense. Some guy is going around making these claims and people are buying into it. And that class opened my mind so much. And I'm so appreciative. Now, Dr. Radford, to my knowledge, was a fundamentalist Christian. But like you said, like they took this seriously. They said, okay, we believe this, but we're not going to lie to you. And I did appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there was a few there. I don't know what it's like today, right? I don't know if it's any better or worse today. I'm frankly so disconnected from it, but that's, I do think they took the Bible seriously, taught us to think critically about it, and do research. But something just kind of fell short of, like, if you think critically, do research, then how are you not also, right? Where's the disconnect? I don't get it.
I don't get it either. I had a conversation with Dr. Saxon. Now, this one wasn't like the fundamentalist stuff or whatever. This was just about like soteriology and everything. Oh, sure. And I remember asking the question everybody asks. It's like, hey, what about people who never hear the gospel? Like, what's up with that? And the answer I got was the answer I knew was coming, where it says, well, if you look at what Paul said, that look at the trees argument, that everyone around knows that a God created this, so they're without excuse. And then I said, well, I mean, okay, I got that. Most societies do believe in a God. That seems to be pretty constant. But there's no way that they're going to guess that there's some triune deity who spoke reality into existence and sent his son into Bronze Age Palestine. I was like, they would never figure
Yahweh and Jesus Christ. Oh, look, an apple tree.
Right? Yeah, they would never figure that out. What a lot of people would say is, well, if they wanted it bad enough, God would send them someone. And the example I brought up was North and South America that didn't hear about Christianity until 500. You're telling me nobody sought out the true God, and millions of people and all that time. And so Dr. Of course, he was like, well, we just have to figure it out. I was like, I'm kind of disappointed in this because I know he's a smart guy. I know he's thought about this, and that it stumped him. And I was like, I wonder if he really, I don't know. Like, I haven't talked to Dr. Saxon in 20 years or whatever, but I had the same thought you had. And that's why I went through a bitter, angry atheist phase where I was just, because I had felt, I was hurt. I felt that these folks had told me this knowing that everything they said led to a dead end, and acted like that wasn't the case, that there was some knowledge. If you study hard enough, you'll find it. I did, more than a lot of people I knew. And it's like, oh, it's just more questions. Why did you say it? Why didn't you just like say, hey, this is what I believe, this is what I think, but I'm not going to say that, oh, you're going to go to hell if you don't think that the sun actually stopped in the sky when Joshua was fighting the enemies of Israel.
Yeah. Oh, you want to get on a fun topic? Talk about.
Go for it.
You said Joshua fighting the enemies of Israel, right? Like that whole Canaan conquest piece. Like there's a few things that really stand out as like aha moments in my life, and I think really trying to think through the conquest of Canaan stories, where supposedly the story is God tells the Israelites to kill everybody in Canaan, the land that they're supposed to possess, like men, women, children, animals, all of it. And they go in and they do that. At least that's kind of what the story says. Like they kill everything and everybody. So you're saying God condoned kind of genocide on a handful? That's a big question.
Yeah.
Until you kind of start doing the research, and you're like, even later on in the Old Testament, in that same story, it brings up Ammonites again and all these other people who were there. So how did they get there if they killed them all? Like, so then you have to ask the question, well, maybe that's not the point of the story. Like, maybe this is like a war document of some sort of like propaganda to let the other nations around the area know that Israel is a bigger deal than they actually think they are. And then you do archaeological research and you realize that it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It's a story.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I honestly I've always taken the Bible seriously. I used to take it literally, to an extent, but ever since leaving fundamentalism, I have a much greater appreciation for the Bible, like a much, much greater appreciation. Wow. Things make so much more sense too. It makes so much more sense. Like when I'm reading about, like the Israelites, honestly, the Old Testament has been of a comedy in a lot of ways. It's hilarious if you just step back and look at it. Because I remember being a kid and reading about, you have the Israelites who are rescued from Egypt by the Lord, like the creator of everything, and they leave him for a rain god. I said, hold on, this, why? And they do it multiple times. Yeah. It's like, why would anyone do this? It's like, oh, okay, this is like a polytheistic culture that you didn't see it, like the monolateralist or monotheistic interpretation that we have. They had a completely different mindset. And the propaganda thing. Oh yeah, God said kill everybody, so we did. Look how terrifying we are. Okay, this makes more sense. This actually makes more sense than an actual God saying, "Oh, you didn't kill all the animals. You're disobeying me." It's like, what? Why do you care if we kill the animals? Yeah. It's bizarre stuff. And so I wanted to ask you. We talked about like the theology and everything of it. People who aren't familiar with the independent fundamental Baptist culture, do you remember any things like rules or customs that really stuck out to you from back then?
This was at college, and I'm sure I have more crazy stories about this. There were rules about the lengths of your sideburns.
I forgot about that.
Right, like I think it only could come down to the middle of the ear or something like that. So there would be a handful of sideburn inspections after chapels, where like the dorm soups or I don't know whoever was outside, and they're like looking at your sideburns as you leave. Like, okay, are yours good or yours good? And that was just so like that's so bizarre thinking through it right now. Like, who the hell cares about the size of your sideburns? Like, what is that going to do? Is that going to make someone fall into sin and go to hell because you have longer sideburns? Is it just so some people don't get carried? Like, do you want to get carried away with sideburns and go full Elvis Presley, or that's just like, what are you trying to do? I think the question. That was one. That's one that stands out, I think.
The sideburns. I was having a discussion with someone just the other day, and they were talking about how they had a family member who went to Maranatha, and they remember overhearing them say, "Yeah, we can't grow beards," and they're like, "Why not?" It's like, "Why? What? That's a Christian thing. You can't grow beards." And I began to say, "So you guys have to look at this. That the independent fundamental Baptist movement is not necessarily it's not so much a religion as it is." You said something. You said that it's not a religion; it's a voting block. That was brilliant. That was brilliant. That's such a good way to put it. And I said, like, it's not it's a civic religion in a lot of ways, that it worships American Christian, white Christian conservatism from a very particular time period, to the extent that you have to actually look like people in the 1950s to be considered godly. You couldn't have long hair. You couldn't have sideburns. You couldn't have a beard. You couldn't. If you look back to like the 60s and 70s, there were like splits in churches over stuff like the kind of glasses. Women couldn't wear pants. That was a rule that changed right after I left. Well, they could wear pants on certain occasions, but they couldn't wear blue jeans. And they just like random stuff like that doesn't really affect your spirituality, but it is an outward representation of the adaptation of a certain culture, which is the Leave It to Beaver culture from the middle of the 20th century.
Well, and I think I was reading the book. I can't remember what it was called. I'll have to get you the information later. But there's a specific, even within Independent Fundamental Baptist, there's a specific movement that would train men, like boys, in this like rigid militaristic kind of style because if you train these boys in this particular way, they grow up and become heads of households, and they are the ones that actually vote. Like they're the ones who are like the decision makers of this paternalistic, patriarchal society kind of thing. And it was a way to continue to move on the right-wing conservative pieces within politics. And it all kind of stems down to training kids when they're younger, training boys when they're younger to look a certain way, to act a certain way, to behave and believe a certain way. And it's all training for future conservative voting.
Yeah. It's strong. It is a strong through line. It is the most consistent through line that you can find in this movement, honestly. A lot of things have changed from the movement from, the 60s or the 50s, or I guess the 20s when it started on to today. One thing that has not changed is the deep involvement in American conservative politics, which brings us to 40 minutes in, exactly why we're talking here. So, all right. In 2016, when Donald Trump ran for president, I didn't think he was going to win. I thought that he'd be too out there for most people. Most people were surprised at Trump's book. But one thing I was not surprised to see was that at the time, Donald Trump had, it was 81% of white evangelical Christians voted for Trump. And a lot of people were shocked by this. And I was like, okay, I can see why you would say, okay, I can't believe these people profess that Christ is the most important thing to them, that God, that morality is a big deal. But it's like, if you grew up in this culture, you kind of got it. Like I could see it. Like Trump.
I get it.
Yeah, Trump reminds me a lot of an egotistical, flamboyant, take no prisoners, like fire-breathing pastor. I can see that in a lot of ways in Trump, and just the kind of the shaved ape psychology of human beings. Like, oh, that guy's the leader, we're going to follow him, and how it kind of preys on that. So if you could, Bobby, walk us through your experience of seeing. So were you in the movement at the time, or had you already left? This was 8 years ago.
Yeah, I'd already left. I was still like being formed by a few ideas. Like I was probably one of the, probably 2015, I would probably say, I'm socially liberal, fiscally conservative. I'd probably say something like that. Right. Until I realized how ridiculous that sounds. And that actually is. So I did not vote for Donald Trump in 2016. I've not voted for Donald Trump.
I was about to say, but I did in 2020 and 2024.
Because there were major moral issues that I had, and right, like I think this goes back to taking the Bible seriously. Like morals was a big deal for us, right? Like you couldn't hold hands with your girlfriend or whatever. Like it was
certainly not your boyfriend.
Certainly not your boyfriend. That was really frowned upon. But like there's all these things that like we were taught that were important, and for the most part, I still believe some of them, right?
Yeah.
Like don't cheat on your spouse. Like that's probably a good moral that I strive for. And he did it 3 times. He probably funded abortions. Like all of these things are like, why are you voting for him? So did not vote for Donald Trump. 81% voted for him. And then in 2020, I think it was 80% that voted for him. And in 2024, it was 81% again. Surprise, surprise. So I think, I don't know what to do about that. Like this is my group that I've been a part of for all my life. And they're kind of abandoning all their basic principles, to continue to vote for this guy. Like, and maybe just like holding their nose one time while they vote, but then overwhelmingly supporting him in 2020 and 2024. That you can't hold your nose 3 times to that guy.
Nope. It is exuberant and enthusiastic support that they have for Donald Trump. And I, like a lot of these folks I knew growing up. I knew growing up. I knew them as good people, as kind people, as caring folks, and then to see them turn into these rabid fascists, like just happily embracing Trump with the most ridiculous statements imaginable, saying stuff like, well, we're voting for a president, not a pastor, or something. I don't remember you saying that when Bill Clinton was president. I don't remember you saying that at all. Because I was there. Okay, I was fucking there. You said that the morality of the leader of this nation is of great importance. Who are we as a people if we have some degenerate like that? Yeah, you cared a lot back then. And or even more insulting, that insulting to them, not even to me, but to them. Well, God used King David, and you saw what kind of person he was. David was an adulterer, and David was a violent man. And I was like, okay, look, all right. David was a competent warrior and politician. Okay, you can't even say this about Donald Trump. It just showed me what my takeaway from this. Well, one of my main takeaways from this is I think that what you saw a white Christian fundamentalist movement do is expose what they actually believe. Is that what they actually believe is they want power for conservative politics. Now, if you're looking at it from a political standpoint, they made the right move. If you're just talking politics is all about power, nothing else. And so you're like, okay, so I'm going to sacrifice my morality and my religion, my faith, and my reputation for power. Politically, it's the right move. Religiously, though, this is the end. Like, there's no way that the children of these people are going to see the fact that, like, oh, they embraced Donald Trump. What? So they could ban abortion? Like, that's it? You traded everything. You're showing that's what actually matters to you. Your morals and your religion and your faith and your spirituality come second to political power. So this just shows me that you don't take it seriously. And you're kind of seeing this with the people who are even. I saw this really cool article about this, that people who profess to be evangelical Christian these days, most of them don't even go to church. Most of them don't go to. Oh, you know about this?
Yeah. There's been several studies over the past few years that, and that's why they've become a voting bloc, is because all the people who say they're evangelical Christians, really what that means is you vote conservatively. It's not about how often you attend church, because, like, I think the vast majority, like you said, don't attend church anymore. So it's just a weird shift. I think what it kind of comes down to, at least in my mind, right? Like, I love my family. I've got several family members that voted for Donald Trump. They're kind people. I think what it comes down to is some sort of, like, we feel we're under attack, right? We're like,
surprise. Yeah.
Right. Right. Evangelical Christians believe we're under attack, and we need somebody to protect the faith. And who's going to do that is some liberal person who's doing X, Y, and Z and is a socialist or a Marxist. Are they really going to defend Christianity? Or is Donald Trump going to be or is the conservative voice going to be the one to defend Christianity when he says, yeah, I'm going to fight for God. I'm the best God fighter out there. Like, I'm going to fight for him in all these ways that you could say Merry Christmas again. God damn it. So I think it's that persecution complex. I think that's part of it.
Yes.
Because like I was thinking about this today. Like, you could say you're a one issue voter, and I kind of get that, at least conceptually. Until you kind of dig into it and you realize abortions have been decreasing since the 80s. They decrease at a faster rate during Democratic presidencies. And the only time that abortions have really gone up in the past 40 years was after Roe versus Wade. That's when the number of abortions have increased. So I'm like, you can see how Republicans really aren't on your side here. But even if you got beyond that, you still have to deal with this persecution complex. You still have to deal with thinking conservative values are the same thing as biblical values, when they're not the same thing. Even though you kind of think they are, and you are kind of, that's your default position, is to think, oh yeah, no one, like this kind of economy is the best way because God intended it in the nation of Israel. It's like, no, that's not how things worked.
This is God, there's so much I want to say about that. We're not going to cover everything. I'll try to go in reverse order here. So when you talked about this type of economy is the economy that God wants, capitalism. an economic system that came into being like 500 years ago that God just fell in love with. He didn't bother like implementing it at any time before that. But you know for a fact that this is a godly system. This is what we want. It's like a religious version of like the Tina principle. There is no alternative. Like, no, this is absolutely what God wants. Right. And I'm so glad you brought up the marriage of their idea, the idea of them marrying Christian theology and conservative politics, because they are inseparable, these folks. They really are. I had a conversation with another former Maranatha student who was still in fundamental. This is years ago. And I was going through stats. And so while it's true that white Protestants vote for Trump overwhelmingly, like 70, 80%, it's the exact opposite for black Protestants. That if you look at black Protestants vote at like 80% for Democrats consistently every election. And I mentioned that black women have the highest church attendance of any demographic in the country. And there's like, oh, that's interesting because black women also vote blue more than any demographic in this nation. And so, and she said, well, that's so odd because, you know, the Bible, like the Democratic Party goes against everything the Bible says. And I was like, well, I mean, according to your interpretation, it does. And this is the persecution complex. It even splits into how you view it. Because listen, I would love for someone to explain to me, to detail, like as thoughtful as you can, the major theological differences between black Protestant Christianity and white Protestant Christianity. You can't. It is essentially the same religion. They're same religion, same God, same Bible, same ancestry. Essentially, like it's the same thing, but politically, they will tell you this is the thing. When I bring this up, folks say, well, you know. Yeah, like theologically different, but that's just church. That has nothing to do with politics. Go fuck yourself, okay? Don't stand here and insult me telling me that these churches aren't heavily political. I've been to them, and like pastors are always leading their people in one way politically. They always say, well, I don't want to, yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. We all know it. And you all believe the Holy Spirit is integral in making decisions like this, and you pray about this. So why is God telling one group of Christians one thing and another group of Christians another? Now, I love asking this to like white evangelical Christians, like, why is it? Like, you're telling me that the black church, the church that fought and struggled through slavery, through the transatlantic slave trade, through 100 years of Jim Crow, that God just abandoned them. God's like, no, we're going to talk to the white folks. God really, I made a joke the other day that God really seems to love white people. This is if you look at all the history. Yeah, it's strange. It's kind of funny how that works. But no, it's like, and they will tell you, they'll say, well, they don't want to say it. But the answer is like, oh, yeah, the black people are all getting it wrong. The white people are all getting it. Now, to be fair, the black people say the same thing. They'd be like, okay, well, the black people are getting it right. I was like, well, here's my solution. God's not telling either of you anything. It's almost like your politics or your church, your religion is an outgrowth of your politics and your values and not the other way around. But they just don't see it. They think, like you said, persecution complex. It's, my God, I can't believe everyone is turning against us after all this time. After all the good we've done to these folks, they have the nerve to turn against us. And like it permeates all their thinking.
Yeah, like while you were talking about that, like I was thinking through a couple articles I read a while back that said the Democrats have not won the white vote since 1964 or something like that.
True.
You know what else happened in 1964?
Tell us, Bobby, what happened? what could have possibly happened?
It was a Civil Rights Act or anything that got passed. Like that probably couldn't be it.
Yep, that's it. And that's why it's so insulting that the Republicans claim like Abe Lincoln, and they claim the Republicans who voted for the Civil Rights Act. Because what they'll tell you, this is something, if you guys hear this, like they'll say, well, you know, the Republicans are the ones who voted for the Civil Rights Act because the Democrats where the South was the Democratic South back then, and they completely opposed the Civil Rights Act. The funny thing is that in the actual Senate votes, a greater percentage of Republicans voted for the act than Democrats. That's true, but it was like 24 Republicans. It was something like 55 Democrats voted for it. So it's like the South just happened to be all Southern Democrats. And like it's hard to explain to folks because they see Democrat, Republican, they don't think any deeper than that the Democratic Party wasn't the same party it was today, where like Northern Democrats and Southern Democrats are two different people that how you voted back then wasn't necessarily tied to your party. It was tied to your region, which is why the Civil War split so evenly like that. But if you read, like, Karl Marx was a big fan of Abe Lincoln, huge fan. He wrote Lincoln letters saying how much he appreciated what Lincoln was doing for labor, how he was destroying slavery. So if you want to claim Abe Lincoln Republicans, you got to claim Karl Marx too. You can't go both ways on this, but it does play into people's poor understanding of history too.
Yeah. I think there's, and I tried to have several conversations with my family about this. It's like, what are the things that the Democrats, or that you say the Republicans who got rid of slavery and all that, what were the things that they were wanting to do? Like, what were their primarily campaign ideas? And it really didn't have anything to do with like conservative values. It was all pretty liberal stuff, is what these Republicans who actually helped abolish slavery, they were pretty liberal ideals. They weren't conservative at all. And the Democrats back then, who wanted to oppose slavery, they were all about states' rights, and they were all about, kicking out the immigrants, and they were all about doing these things. And that kind of sounds a little bit more like the conservative party that we have today. So when you think of Democrats back in, I don't know, the early 1900s, you got to think conservative. You can't think liberal, or you can't think Democrat and Republican.
Yeah.
You got to conservative and liberal, right?
Right, because parties change. The Republican Party isn't the same party it was 20 years ago, let alone 80 or 100 years ago. And an example I like to use for this is I ask people, so people they love to say that, well, the Democrats founded the Ku Klux Klan, which is true. The Democratic Party, well, not the party, but it was staffed by Democrats from the South, I think 1868 or something like that, or 63. But they love to say this without referencing what the Klan actually stood for. This is one of my favorite things to do, because you guys can Google this. Like, the Ku Klux Klan was an active political party in the United States until very recently, honestly. Like, David Duke was a leader in the Klan, and he was in the Louisiana State House or State Senate, one or the other, like an active politician. So you can actually still Google the party platforms, the recent party platforms of the Ku Klux Klan, which is what I did just now. And I'm going to pull it up here. And this is from 1999. This is the Klan platform from 1999. And I am going to just go over this a little bit. So, oh man, this is a horrible time for a mouse to freeze. I don't know. Oh no, this is awful. Why is it stuck? This is bad. Hold on. I wish this wasn't live. Let me see. I don't like having the word Ku Klux Klan on the page like that. Just that's annoying. Okay. Okay, well, I can't pull it up because my mouse isn't cooperating. But anyway, if you go through the party platform, it says stuff like American schools and American universities have been taken over by communists and Marxists and their indoctrination camps to brainwash our children. The transsexual or transgender and gay community is infiltrating our neighborhoods, and they are causing degeneracy to spread. We got to put a stop to this. They say that we need to return to Christian traditional values. They say we need to outlaw abortion in every single circumstance, that our cities like New York and Chicago and Philadelphia have become violent hellholes, and the government is trying to take your guns away. It says, it is, I always say this, the Klan platform is not similar to the Republican platform. It is the same. It is not similar. It is the same. It is the exact same thing that you will, if you just take out the slurs and the overt references to Jews, you would not be able to tell the difference between what the Klan platform says and what Republicans say every fucking day. And I bring this up as listen, I have grown quite tired of pretending that the Republican Party is a legitimate political organization with ideas that need to be taken seriously. It is not. It is the Ku Klux Klan. Like, I'm amazed that people who run, not even just Democrats, but anyone who's running against a Republican doesn't just bring that. Just bring a copy of the KKK platform and just go over. Ignore every question they have and say, why does your platform sound exactly like this one? Like, please defend that to me. I don't know how you could possibly lose doing something like that, but it's just that's how brainwashed people are. They don't see an issue with this at all.
Nope. Well, Democrats suck at marketing, so maybe that's just the reason maybe that's just why it is. I don't,
It is. Yeah, it is sad. So that's but with the whole Trump thing, what do you think? Like, do you agree? Like, do you think it's going to hurt the movement at all? Because that's where I fall on this. That I think that after enough time, it's going to actually hurt the advancement of at least that specific form of Christianity.
Yes and no. Like, I think yes, because there's a lot of people leaving now, right? Like, we're talking about a pretty small sect of Western Christianity that I think has been shrinking for a while.
Yes.
And I think that this will continue to do that, but it's going to continue to insulate people who are already there. Like, they're gonna continue to build their echo chambers. They're going to continue to build like the persecution complex. Like, we're being persecuted, so we must be doing something right. So I think it's going to solidify a couple things within that group kind of for years to come. I don't know if it'll ever die out, but I do think that it is shrinking. I don't know. Those are
yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. I just have a hard time seeing it lasting after. I don't know. That's just me. Because you're right. It has been shrinking a lot. Yep. And especially with, that actually goes into the next topic out here perfectly. What exactly brought you out of the movement? So I'll share exactly like how it worked for me, because we both had like these thoughts in college. Mine happened pretty quick. It essentially happened halfway through college, where I realized that I couldn't identify. Outwardly, I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything for years. But I realized that if I can't definitively demonstrate that just the New Testament was, actually came from God and the verbal plenary inspiration of Almighty God, I couldn't say what?
Good words, verbal plenary.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So it's like that if I couldn't do that, I had no business calling myself an independent fundamental. I could hardly call myself a Christian, honestly. It's like, but I still believed in God. I still believed in, honestly, I'd have to look at the trees thing. Like, okay, why is there something rather than nothing and everything? And I kind of held on to that. And it was years later, probably 7-8 years later, when I kind of realized I became kind of like a pantheist or a deist or whatever, that I believed there was some sort of God, some sort of prime mover, a divine artificer, something that got this all going. But I didn't believe that this entity could speak to me, that it performed miracles, that it had anything for me when I died. And then I realized at one point, it's like, oh, that's essentially what atheists believe. It's like the exact same thing. I'm just like putting something there. So that's when I realized that I lost like all belief in a deity. Once again, one might exist, I don't know, but I don't believe in one. And that was about an 8-year period over that time. And I didn't tell anyone. Well, I told one person. I was dating someone, and she was a Christian, like pretty much a fundamentalist, like we were. And I had to tell her, because I knew, you can't be unequally yoked with unbelievers. I knew I wasn't be able to keep this a secret for 50 years. I knew I couldn't do that. And so I was like, okay, I owe it to her to tell her that I don't believe. And, she broke it off because, rules and all that. But I kept it a secret from everyone else for, another 5, 6, 7 years. I can't even remember. And I kept getting into these relationships. And, once your die is cast, it doesn't really change. I was attracted to the same type of person that I was before, which were like good Christian girls, right? That's the only thing that worked for me. And I would tell them, I was like, okay, let's this is how I am. Like, oh, no, it's going to be fine. It was never fine. Once he started getting serious, they start thinking about it. It's like, oh, if we get married, we have kids, we're going to do with that. And I kept breaking up with these girls. My parents were like, TJ, what is going on? Like, what is happening? Like everything. And so I had to end up telling them, and it couldn't have gone better. My folks and my family have just been incredible, and it doesn't work that way for everyone. It gets rough for a lot of folks that I've talked to, but our relationship couldn't be better. And they've my dad did say something really funny when I told him, and he said, I kind of suspected something was up just with stuff that you would say sometimes, stuff you would post online. And he said, but you're still my son. I love you. I always will. And he said, I would love you just as much if I wouldn't care if you were like a Muslim or something. And then I was like, well, that Muslims believe in God. I don't. So they're actually closer to you than I am. But so it was just kind of funny. But how did your journey go, and where did you end up theologically?
Wow, that's a big question. So I would say like some of those little chinks in the armor of the fundamentalist movement kind of started in college.
Right.
I broke away from like the social rules of fundamentalism pretty quick, right? Like started having a beer or two, started
Oh my God.
movie theaters, started I don't know, listening to rock music, probably some of those things. And but I think what really kind of started nailing down where I stand was our church. We partner with several local like nonprofits that serve like single mothers who are about ready to go into foster care. We're foster parents. We've been doing it for 5 years now. Like actually meeting vulnerable people. There's one kind of watershed moment that was told as in our church was we were one of the moms we were working with. I believe I get the story straight. She was a Black lesbian woman who her partner had just left her, and she was about to be out on the streets. Mm-hmm. And she just kind of broke down crying, like asking for help, like and even praying to like Jesus. That I'm like, first of all, I don't think my former life that would make sense. Like, why would a lesbian person pray to Jesus? Like,
yeah,
that doesn't calculate right. And then the more I kind of come into some of this, I'm like, man, like I think I just met Jesus here almost, right? Like there's a sense where I believe Jesus is near the brokenhearted, like he's for the poor, the marginalized, the oppressed. Like that's his focus in his life. Jesus is probably more near to her than he would be to me as a middle-aged white guy who makes decent money. So I'm like, I think I need to go here. Like, I think Jesus loves her, and I think she loves Jesus, and I think that's awesome and beautiful. So I think things like that really started making me understand, like, poor people love Jesus probably more than rich people do. Like Jesus talks more about rich people in negative ways than he does about the poor. That's a big deal for him. And we get it back, and I've gotten it backwards. So I think the more I've interacted with vulnerable people, the more like all of these paradigms just started breaking down. Like there's no one I can't welcome in, because Jesus would do the same thing. He would welcome in the outcasts and the prostitutes and the kids and all of these things. So I think that's kind of when my theology started breaking down into being like, I've gotten this wrong for a long time.
That is great. Red Scare Claire comments like that got in the fields. That is the last show I did, I was saying how with the conservative right, the political conservative right Christianity, you'll see them quote Exodus a lot. You'll see them quote Leviticus, or you'll hear them quote the words of Paul. You very rarely hear them quote Jesus. Very rarely. I don't know if you noticed this, but like you never really hear them saying a lot of the stuff that Jesus said. Because if you did, you would sound like a fucking lib. You would sound like some sort of limp-wristed sissy boy who's out here, caring for all these folks. And I can't stress it. But people like to throw around and say, well, Jesus was socialist. Technically, no, because socialism didn't exist back then. But look, looking at what he said, it was a lot closer to socialism than what you guys believe. And I say a lot that, like Jesus said that you have to choose between serving God and serving mammon. I know which one that today's Christian right is serving. They are serving mammon. They choose mammon 7 days a week, very gladly so. And you are so right about Jesus's message. When you said that, Jesus talked favorably about poor people, that's true. Also, there's nothing Jesus enjoyed more than shitting on rich people. Jesus never said one kind thing about rich people in his entire ministry. He was always saying, oh, another one. Do you remember when they would say that when Jesus said that it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man into the kingdom of heaven? You remember this?
That door? Or
yes.
That gate, right? And they would they would get all the stuff off the camel and shimmy through That's bullshit.
Yeah, it's bullshit. I was an adult. I was well into adulthood before I found out that was completely made up, entirely made up. And that was like, okay, so this is just a way to protect. Oh, another one I loved is the story of the rich young ruler. Because the rich young ruler comes to Jesus and says, hey, what must I do to be saved? And Jesus gives him the same answer he gave everyone. Like the same answer was, hey, sell all your stuff, give it to the poor, and follow me. And the rich young ruler didn't do it. And he went away and sad. And they said, well, Jesus doesn't actually want. It's okay. Well, why do you want that guy to do it? What makes you better than that guy? And it's like, well, he loves his possessions. He loves his possessions too much. Apparently you do too. Apparently it's the exact same thing. And it's like, I just like the juxtaposition between how Jesus not only treated rich people, but how he thought about them. It could not be more different. And you saw this all the time. I remember hearing this. You would hear this stuff like not just from like Republican politicians, but from people in church that, well, a poor guy never gave me a job or stuff like that. Or that they essentially said that you should like worship rich people, because this is another reason Trump worked. Because like if you follow this orthodoxy, they try to say that they're not like prosperity gospel folks, but they are. They absolutely are. Because it's the same message as American conservatism, that look, if you keep your nose clean, you work hard, you follow all the rules, you might not be wealthy, but you'll be comfortable. You're not going to suffer. You're going to be okay. And if you work really hard, you'll probably be wealthy. So if someone is rich, there's an off chance that they might be a thief, a crook, or a bad person. But more likely than not, they just worked hard and they deserve their wealth. And if Donald Trump is the richest guy on stage, he is right. He is favored by God. And so I just don't know how you separate this thought process from the rich here. Oh my God. Claire said, I remember seeing Dave Ramsey say he felt capitalism was the most in line with Christianity. My eyes almost popped out of my head. Look, we know an entire episode on Dave Ramsey. That's
a different time.
Altogether. I'll do that all together sometime. But yeah, that was so that was when you decided that, okay, this is really where I depart from here. But what about theologically? So that was like go ahead. Like theologically, what happened?
So I don't know I don't know where I would fall into. Like I read a lot of David Bentley Hart is one. Like he's a universalist who thinks that everyone eventually will go to heaven. So I don't exactly know where I stand just yet on these things. Like I don't know if I have a category for it. Like I would say, like if you Google open process theology, maybe I'm kind of into like there. But like I think my ideals of like I don't believe there's a literal hell. Like I don't believe like there's a handful of things that people would be like, oh, how does that work? Like I just think the idea of hell is nonsensical. Paul never talks about hell. He never uses one of the three words that is usually referenced to hell. And if Paul is your boy, then he doesn't talk about the virgin birth. He doesn't talk about the hell. Like things are going to start to crumble if you actually look into it a lot. So I would say like I want to continue to love Jesus by loving others. I don't do a good job at it, but we want to continue to figure out how to best do that as a part of a community. I would say that's probably where I'm at.
I've said for a long time that universalism makes the most sense to me. Honestly, it does, because even there were things, I don't know. There's just some things that just seem like logically just fit. I'm not the smartest person on earth, but like the logic just makes sense to me. Kind of like for a while, I'm sure you were here for a while too. I'm gonna take a wild guess that when it came to evolution, we were taught that evolution was nonsense, that scientists know that every animal on earth was created in its current state, but they're lying to you because they want to keep you from God. They just do. That's just part of being a scientist. It's the first thing you learn in scientist school. God is real, but we have to hide it from people and for reasons. And then what a lot of people thought was like theistic evolution, because like once you really study this, once you look more into it, it's like, okay, these things obviously evolve, there's no denying this. But if you are a Christian, you still have your belief, like, okay, well, that's fine, God just created everything, and through time we had evolution. My problem came in with original sin, because I couldn't, like, when would you point out the original sin if there's this long succession of us, not only to, like, cavemen to apes, but the fish and bacteria? Like, what part of us needed a blood sacrifice? And shoot, I forgot what I was going to go here. You had said so. Oh, universalism, that's right. And but universalism always made more sense to me, because was Jesus' death sufficient or not? Because, like, you're going to tell me that God looked down and saw the problem of sin and came to the conclusion of the blood sacrifice of his son, but it wasn't good enough. Sorry, I need more work from you. I'm sorry, that never made sense to me. So universalism did seem just more logical on that part.
Well, it's like the idea, like, so Adam sinned once and everybody's damned. Jesus does his thing, and it only works for some.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's not fair.
Like a better Adam, like, isn't that kind of the point of the story?
That's a good point.
How does this work out? I don't know.
Why was Adam's sin more powerful than Jesus' sacrifice? That's good. That's really good, man. I love that. So, all right. So your the departure. Like, how did your family and friends take it, and how did you break the news to them?
I think it was just such a long process that it wasn't a surprise to anybody. So I think, like, it wasn't a big deal, to be honest.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Which I know I'm lucky to be in a spot.
Incredibly lucky, yeah.
But it really wasn't that big of a deal. And I think, like, my parents are thoughtful, they're respectful, they listen well, and so when we kind of started having these conversations, they're like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think there's still a lot of, like, baggage from that fundamentalist background that they still have, but they listen, and they're kind, and they know where we're coming from. Like, our church serves a lot of, like, people, and we're like a 50-person church, so we're not, like, big, and we do a lot of really good work, and we love people well, I think. So I think the thing of, okay, we're doing what we think Jesus would have done, and we can say, yeah, creation is probably just a social construct from the very beginning of how they're trying to figure out whose God is best.
Yeah.
In that region, right? Like, I think that's the creation story. So it is okay to hold these two things, even though you might think they kind of butt heads. They don't. They really don't.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, a lot of people weren't so lucky. Like, and, like, a lot of folks don't even, like, go as far as I did of just abandoning all of it. Yeah. Like, some folks, I was talking to one guy, he was afraid to tell his folks that he plays a guitar because of, like, that's a worldly instrument or something like that, or that they would listen to rock music. We could do a whole show talking about how the 2/4 beat is evil. Well, it's evil, one, because it incites carnal lust and you trying to clap, and second, because it came from black people. And like, that's I mean, we're not joking. That's really what they said, that before black people got here, that that kind of music didn't exist. And so in the Western society, and so the syncopation was what they used to like call evil spirits for voodoo and everything. Like, it's a lot of this movie is about hating black people. They won't say it out loud, but a lot of it is about that. So yeah, I'm glad that it worked out, that because I talk to people sometimes who they'll message me and say something like, oh yeah, I actually agree with a lot what you say, but I can't tell my folks, or they're a deacon or they're a pastor or their spouse would leave them. So, like, I do think about how fortunate folks like us are who did have a family, which is actually kind of sad that people are that loving and accepting. All right, so the close thing, I always like to ask people for their favorite bit of trivia. Do you have the what's a bit of trivia for us?
So there's a podcast that I've been listening to. It's called The Universe by John Green. John Green does, like, these crash course videos on YouTube. They're phenomenal. They're great. I love them. And he talks about, like, how the universe started. Like, they can see back all the way to, like, milliseconds, like right after the Big Bang, right? They can see that far back, and all the way to where we are now and where we think we're going in the future and how the universe is going to end. And he has a conversation with an theoretical astrophysicist. Super smart people. One of the things that they said on just how, like, our sun Like, you know how it takes light takes 8 minutes to get to Earth or 9 minutes to get to Earth. So one photon, one atom of light takes 8 minutes to get from the surface of the sun to Earth. That same photon takes from the center of the sun takes 10,000 years to get to the surface of the sun. I was just blown away. Like that is mind-boggling, crazy. And that's a medium-sized star. Like we're not even talking about some of these big ones that are out there. So if you haven't listened to that podcast, I highly recommend it. But even just the story of the larger universe and how it got here, so many trivia points that like blue light and red light and man.
That's one of astronomy is one of my favorite subjects. Astronomy is one of my favorite subjects, and like
so cool.
And what I'm guessing you're referencing with the blue light and red light is the red shifting of galaxies through the telescopes. That the galaxy. So what Bobby was talking about is that so nothing can move at the speed of light or faster than light in in space, but space can move faster than light, and it does. So our universe is expanding, and we can tell it's expanding because of things start shifting away and they get this reddish hue about them. It's kind of like if you think about sound with the Doppler effect and how sound sounds like a little different.
Going past your car.
Light does the same thing. And so if something is blue shifted, it's coming toward you. If it's red shifted, it's moving away. And the speed at which these galaxies are moving away from each other is actually greater than the speed of light, because once again, the space is moving, not something within space, which is cool. But it's unexplainable. No one knows why it's happening. Like it's stronger than gravity or anything that we know of. They call it dark energy, which is kind of a lazy name, but no one knows why it's happening. But what's really sad about this is that since those galaxies are moving faster than light, eventually the time is going to come when the light from these galaxies is slower than the galaxies moving, and the light will never reach us. It'll just go black. That's billions. Wow. Yeah, it'll be billions, maybe trillions of years away or whatever. But eventually, there will come a point in time when you look out in the sky, you will not see any galaxies other than ours. Like our galaxy will be that's so far in the future, but it will happen. Yeah. And I feel bad for, we won't be here at that time, but whatever civilization, whatever creatures are on Earth, in the Milky Way galaxy, that they'll never, because think about it. If we didn't see those galaxies, we would think that the entire universe is this one galaxy, like a solid state galaxy that we can't we wouldn't be able to find out about the Big Bang. We wouldn't be able to find out about anything. I was like, oh, that's kind of sad that they're going to miss all that knowledge, but Jesus, who knows how much knowledge we missed out on. So, I mean, I feel, you can't, but oh man, I could talk astronomy for hours. That's so cool with the light and everything like that, and how long it takes to get certain places. The trivia I wanted to bring up is not quite as interesting, but it's yours. Yours is pretty good. I love that. But Bluetooth was named after a pirate. So Bluetooth is named after a 10th century Scandinavian pirate named Harold Bluetooth, and he was a ruler in like the late 10th century, I think, who brought Christianity to the Jutland Peninsula, and he also united the tribes of the Jutland Peninsula. So when the creators of Bluetooth technology, I keep forgetting this shares automatically on this one, but when the creators of Bluetooth technology came up with this tech, they said that Bluetooth was going to unite devices the same way that Bluetooth, the pirate, united the tribes in the Jutland Peninsula of Denmark. And actually, the symbol for Bluetooth is the Nordic runes that represented his initials, H and B, and that's how we got the Bluetooth symbol right there. So yeah, that's not quite as cool as quantum physics, Bobby. But I didn't expect anyone to do that, because honestly, astronomy was like my usual go-to right there, because I love astronomy facts. But man, I would have brought some more from that. But anyway, yeah, maybe next time. But look, man, thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate. I love these conversations. I love seeing where people ended up and the experiences they went through. Yours remarkably smooth, honestly. Like I've heard some real horror stories, and I love that it started at college with you too, because a lot of people started later than college. Because it turns out, I guess people didn't take this work as seriously as we did in college. A lot of folks just kind of skated through, it seemed.
Yeah, like there's still something missing. Like I think a lot of people probably do take it seriously, but there's there's a gap between, then why are you still here? Like if you're really taking it seriously, what are you doing?
Yeah,
There's
I
something else. I don't know.
We'll see. We'll see. Well, all right, man. I appreciate it. Thanks so much, and we'll thank you guys for joining.
Good to chat with you, TJ. See ya.
Good stuff. See ya.